The Toronto Blue Jays are yet again making moves, and this one is Adam Cimber. He will not be back with the club, but he had a pretty good Blue Jays tenure, so shout out to him. And another target, Brandon Woodruff, is on the market. He was non-tendered by the Milwaukee Brewers, so we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, we've seen a few moves go down around Major League Baseball lately. We've seen a couple of trades, albeit minor. We've seen some players non-tendered that we didn't expect to see non-tendered, so that means they're free agents and free to sign with any team that they wish. Now, one big player that we've circled on our radars here, Nick, is Brandon Woodruff, and we're going to discuss him in depth because it just seems like an ideal Blue Jays target right there. But there's just so much action going around, and you got to believe that the Jays' next move or trade is right around the corner because every team is starting to get active right now. Players are starting to kind of solidify themselves with organizations, and 40-man rosters have been set. So you got to believe that a lot of trades and free agent signings are here to come. And ahead of the winter meetings, I mean, things are starting to move really quickly here, and it's an exciting time to be not only a Blue Jays fan, but a baseball fan as well.
We're finally at the point where moves are actually happening. Before we get into the abundance of moves that happened yesterday, quick reminder, about 70% of you guys aren't subscribed, and we're about 250 subs away from 10,000, which is huge for us. So make sure to hit that if you're not subscribed already. Let's get into it, Peter, and we'll discuss Woodruff in depth as well. But first, let's get into what happened yesterday on the Blue Jays side. We only had one non-tender, and that is Adam Cimber, and all remaining unsigned players on our 40-man roster have been tendered contracts for 2024. Peter, what are your initial thoughts on this? He was projected to earn about $3.2 million. This sheds about $3 million from our payroll, and I'll discuss in a minute here with the screenshot the other players that we did not non-tender, that, the salaries regarding that. But Cimber had a great season a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, last season he was really bad, played with injuries, and I mean, it makes sense. The Jays bullpen depth, as funny as it sounds saying this now compared to 2 years ago, is very, very strong, and he was a guy who probably wouldn't have much of an impact, and I think they're trying to save as much payroll in a push for one of the big name free agents.
I don't know if it's a payroll thing. I think it's more so what you talked about, Nick. It's about the depth that this team boasts when it comes to the bullpen. Yeah, Adam Cimber is an okay long man, but for $3.4 million, you could call up a couple of guys like a Nate Pearson, like a Yasser Zulueta. Don't know if they're exactly major league ready, but you have cheaper options in AAA that are ready to contribute, if not at the level or above the level that Adam Cimber would have contributed, and you're saving some money in that regard. So I think it's more so turning it over to the young guys and giving them a chance to really assert themselves when it comes to that bullpen depth, as opposed to shaving some salary or anything like that. So I wouldn't look too much into that. I still think the Jays are going to be aggressive in their pursuit of one of the top dogs in free agency, but I don't think Adam Cimber would have deterred them from that. I think it's more so just relying on other internal options that they have.
Yeah, and looking at the other payroll here, some Blake Murphy. So the Blue Jays announced obviously the non-tendered Adam Cimber, and then tendered all the other eligible player. And MLBTR is usually pretty accurate with these projections. So we have Trevor Richards. You can go through and read all of them. Peter, do any of these guys stand out to you? These are about the salaries we will be paying these guys. It makes sense. Most of them, I think, make a decent amount of sense to me. Some people were discussing Trevor Richards, but I think at $2.4 million estimated, of course, Trevor Richards is a pretty good option. And then everyone else is very, very key. Genesis Cabrera was one of the great additions of Ross Atkins' last trade deadline type time. And I think the rest of the guys here make total sense. I would not want to give up on any of them, especially at the prices that they're making. They're all pretty reasonable, and I think Cimber was the only one, but I guess Richards was another guy people were discussing, but I think everyone else was a lock.
I'm seeing a lot of great value, apart from maybe Vladimir Guerrero Jr. over there making $20.4 million. I mean, all those guys are valuable contributors to this team. And Dalton Varsho, if he's playing center field for you every day and he's going to jack 25 home runs and play defense at a platinum glove level, then $5.5 million is a bargain. But this is what arbitration is for. It's to help these teams manage their payroll so they can allocate more money towards one player or a couple of star players. So I like it. I see some great value across the board there. And all those guys that are on that list are big-time players for this team. I wouldn't call them stars, but Eric Swanson for $2.7 million. I mean, this guy's a premier setup man around Major League Baseball. Same thing can be said for Tim Meza. Kevin Biggio probably going to be in an everyday role. He's making 3.5. So you're definitely saving some money in some areas if you're the Blue Jays, which will allow you to spend more when it comes to the left field position or the third base position or even the DH position if they're looking to upgrade over there. So I like it. I think the Blue Jays are being smart with their payroll right now. But this one guy that I want to discuss, maybe they're shaving in some areas to give money to this guy.
Yeah, and one quick thing. I agree with you, and I think Vladdy at 20.4 may seem steep because his year last year. I think ultimately that'll end up being decent value, assuming he goes back to a shade of himself. But yeah, I agree. The rest of them are phenomenal. Let's get into some of the other notable players non-tendered today. So you have Woodruff, you have Kyle Lewis, Nick Senzel, former top prospect, Austin Meadows, left-handed former home run hitter. You have Vogelbach, Rowdy Tellez, among others. But the one here is Brandon Woodruff. Now, Peter, if we go back and you look at some of the tweets, I don't have a screenshot of this from about a year ago or 2 years ago. The Jays used to be in on Brandon Woodruff. There used to be lots of trade circulation. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it used to happen. If you go on Twitter and type in Woodruff, you'll find that as well. And of course, here, the Brewers' right-hander, Brandon Woodruff, was non-tendered. He is a two-time All-Star who underwent shoulder surgery and is expected to miss all of next season and was scheduled to make around $11 million. Now, Peter, you mentioned this to me, and we saw it online as well, that the Brewers are willing to, listen to everyone regarding potentially trading some of their star players. Yelich, Woodruff in this case is gone now, so he won't be traded. But this is the best player, obviously, among this list. Obviously, he's missing next season at $11 million. But Peter, there's some rumblings about maybe a Chad Green. The Jays pull a Chad Green on Brandon Woodruff and how he would fit the Blue Jays, especially with the uncertainty revolving around some of their rotation. Not next year, but the year after. Kikuchi will be off the books. You have some aging guys, so what are your thoughts on a potential Brandon Woodruff to Toronto? Albeit he is coming off of an injury, but we'll get into his stats in a second. But this guy's he's the real deal when he pitches.
Yeah. This screams Blue Jays. And look at the track record that they have. Bringing in Robbie Ray, turning his career around. Bringing in Marcus Semien, turning his career around, getting him paid in free agency. Both those guys got big-time deals in their 30s in free agency, and they came through the Blue Jays pipeline in that one-year deal or a couple years in the case of Robbie Ray. So Brandon Woodruff, his case was not him underperforming. His problem is that he can't stay on the field. He can't stay healthy. But you touched on the uncertainty in 2025. Sure, he's going to miss the 2024 season, but I think the Jays have this year covered when it comes to starting rotation because they'll have Alek Manoah. They'll have another year of Yusei Kikuchi. You don't know who else they're going to bring in on a cheap one-year deal or anything of that nature. So he can make his money. He can rehab in the Blue Jays state-of-the-art facility in Dunedin. He can work alongside Pete Walker and the great pitching coaching staff that the Blue Jays have. And then he can prove his worth in 2025 with a club option over there and then try to get paid in free agency the following offseason. Because when he is on the field, he's dynamite. His stuff is electric. He's in the high 90s. His slider, his changeup. I mean, he's got it all. He's got a full arsenal. The only thing is that he can't stay on the field. But when he comes to the Blue Jays, or if he comes to the Blue Jays, his workload would be lessened a little bit just because of all those arms that they do have in the starting rotation, whether it be Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, Alek Manoah, if he gets back to form. So have options to cover up for those injuries, and Brandon Woodruff can pitch stress-free. He can kind of get back into a rhythm similar to a Chad Green type situation. Chad Green missed the majority of the season. They signed him to a couple of club year deals, and then now he's back pitching, and he's going to be a big part of the team going forward, at least for the next 2 seasons. So this screams Blue Jays. I can't stress it enough. We've seen this same exact scenario happen time and time again with them, whether it be injuries or poor performance, and they've turned players around who then go off to make more money elsewhere. But this makes sense. It fits the Blue Jays window of the next 2 years, and I'm all for it. Give the man his money.
Yeah, I'd be all over this if I were the Jays. It makes complete sense. I'm sure there'll be other teams. There definitely will be other teams who are going for him. But revolving around the 2024 season, the Jays have one of the best, if not the best, starting rotation in baseball projected, and now they can go out and get a guy. And if you're unfamiliar with Woodruff, he used to be in the conversation with Corbin Burns for one of the best pitchers in baseball on Milwaukee. They had not similar value, but they were very, very close. He was unbelievable. And if the Jays can go out and I don't know. I just want to see it happen. I'd be disappointed almost if it doesn't happen. There hasn't been solid reports yet that the Jays are pursuing him per se, but everyone's going out there and saying how much of a good fit it would be. And again, it depends a lot on whether Woodruff actually wants to be in Toronto, how much he's going to make in a contract or want in a contract. We don't know. His ARB was set at $11 million, which, I mean, it's up to you whether you want to pay that. They paid a pretty steep price for Chad Green. I think it's going to pay off in the long run there, but I don't know. I would be upset almost if they didn't get him, assuming that's because they get outbid. did, but it makes all the sense in the world, and I can't imagine a much better fit for a team and the player as well.
Yeah, and shoulder injuries are tough. It's not like Tommy John where you can recover no problem. So there is a lot of uncertainty there. But the Blue Jays could probably take the gamble just because of how many good quality arms that they do have in their rotation and in the minor leagues as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a gamble when you're paying a guy multiple $1 million who's going to miss an entire season, and you know that. But the Blue Jays have shown the willingness to do that, whether it be with Chad Green or other players that they've brought in, and so far it's paid off. I mean, we saw Chad Green pay dividends. He was one of the more important pitchers down the stretch for the Blue Jays. Kind of even took over that Eric Swanson role later on in the season as he was starting to falter off a little bit. So it's important. You can never have too many arms, and I would definitely be in on Brandon Woodruff if I'm Ross Atkins and company. I mean, you got nothing to lose. Sure, it's a lot of money, $11 million for a guy who's not going to play, and you don't necessarily have to expand your payroll, but you might as well take a shot because if this guy is healthy in 2025 and he's in your rotation, that's a guy that can put you over the top. And so you're looking for that guy that's going to take you to the promised land. Brandon Woodruff, when he's healthy, when he's taking that bump every fifth day, he's ready to go, and he's one of the more electric pitchers in all of baseball. Just look at those numbers year in, year out. I mean, the strikeout numbers speak for themselves. The ERA speaks for itself, and he's just great. He's great. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, like two-time All-Star. Even last year, before he got injured, 2.28 ERA and 11 starts. So go out, Ross Atkins, and get that done. And a bit surprised the Brewers non-tendered him, given what they, their pitching isn't the best. But that'll wrap up the video. If you want to see your video from yesterday, click on your screen now. And moves are going to start heating up, and we'll have you covered. So see you tomorrow.